You can go to any number of sources to hear about how humans are storytelling animals. Storytelling is what we do. It's how we communicate, how we pass down information and strategies. Stories give us a chance to feel emotions in situations we might not otherwise get to be in. Most people have a sense of their life as a story. It is part of what makes a life have meaning. Your opinions about how your story is unfolding may vary, but the main point here is that we all already have a story about our own lives. I think part of our storytelling brilliance can be seen in the dreams we have at night. When you are asleep and start to have a dream, there, in your mind, is like a whole office filled with file cabinet after file cabinet, a whole lifetime of experiences to choose from. Everything you have seen and heard and smelt and felt and thought about, every experience is there and available for, what should we call it? The energy, maybe? The energy that animates you comes in like a whirlwind at night and uses all those pieces, well, the ones it picks, it uses them. It just merges them all together to form a story. Now, you may say that the stories of our dreams are all simply synapses blinking on and off. Or you might think that dreams come from an actual astral plane and the events that you dream about actually take place there. I'm not interested in that debate for the purpose of this episode, or honestly, even at all. Believe whatever works for you. What I'm saying here is simply that whatever your metaphysics about dreams, I think you'll agree that each dream is in a story form, effortlessly created. However weird and surrealistic, you are very naturally telling a story. I think this dreaming aspect of us is the original storyteller. And storytelling is what I want to talk about today. Hello and welcome to the 10 Crutches podcast. My name is David. I'm glad you're here. To state the obvious once again, your life, my life, each life is a story. You are somebody living in a particular way, in a particular circumstance, at a particular time and place. How does telling yourself a story about your own life work for being present? Because after all, the 10 Crutches podcast is at least supposed to be about being present. For many of my episodes, a lot of what I talk about can be considered something like, if you really want to be present, you have to let go of your stories. At some points in the podcast, I even talk about how each word we utter is, in a way, a story. Each word represents a point of view that has some serious limitations. Because every story can only be a story by leaving out a lot. So, for example, let's take the word flower. Flower, not the kind of flour you bake with, but a flower, the pretty things that grow out of the ground. Anybody who hears this word and understands English enough to know what it means, anybody's going to get some meaning from hearing this word. If you had to say what the meaning was, you could probably come up with something or other, but as we all know, an actual flower in front of you is beyond any word or description. The actual experience of a flower is, well, you can't think of it. You have to have a flower and actually experience it to find out. I sometimes try to use words in this podcast to find some way to go beyond words, to point beyond the story, to what is happening beyond the story. But here in this episode, I want to focus on the story itself. I want to focus on how the story is what's happening, at least some of the time. Stories are ongoing. They are about the past, since there's always a lead up to the action of the story, even if it's not explicitly stated. Stories are also about the future as well, because every character in a story has some future to contend with. And of course, each story has a present where it takes place. But how can listening to a story, which takes place through time, how can it help you live in the present? Well, I think of it the same way that you can be present while listening to music. When you hear Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, what you heard was, at the time you heard it, in the present. But the present moment was a series of notes played in succession. You don't break apart each note into a separate event. You don't mourn the loss of one passing note or celebrate the birth of another note. You just hear the succession of all the notes playing through time as one piece of music in the present. Music expands your present in a way. I'll play a slightly longer clip of this music so you can experience what I'm talking about. Just as a side note, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony was first performed in Vienna in 1808. I guess that's a little story about Beethoven's Fifth. Very short story. I think in a similar way to listening to music, with a story, you stay present by living completely all the moments of the story, as well as the moments beyond the story. And we humans seem to be made to have this capacity. Each person has a story for their life. Each person has a potential origin story, although many people may not have invented it yet. An origin story is about your purpose and your meaning. It tells you how you got to be the way you are, what your mission is. Most superheroes have an origin story, like Superman coming from the planet Krypton or Spider-Man getting bitten by a radioactive spider. It's a fun exercise, or it can be, to look at some of the qualities of a good origin story and then write one for your life. King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone. I'm going to put some links in the show notes about this if you want to follow it further and write your own origin story. What gives your life meaning? What do you like? What are you drawn to? What do you dislike? What do you turn away from? Or you can reflect for a time on what you tend to ignore. What is present in your life that you, for the most part, pay little attention to? Anything about your left elbow recently? Probably not. There's a ton of stuff like that, a ton of stuff in every life that more or less gets ignored. What meaning might those things have that you are missing? If you think your left elbow isn't all that important, find someone who doesn't have one and ask them about it. We all must, by our nature and capacity, we all must represent ourselves to ourselves. Just like I have a quote-unquote flower in my mind to represent all flowers, I also have a quote-unquote book, I have a quote-unquote cloud, and so I also have a quote-unquote David in my mind. A self-image is probably the most complicated image any of us have. It's our central image, the image that is aware of and is connected to all the other images and perceptions and memories and fantasies and pasts and future, all the whole thing. It's like a central star with all the other things orbiting around it. We are each the creator of our own story, and we are each the one we are telling the story to. We are the storyteller and the audience. We're so complicated. So while I don't know if you can tell, I'm celebrating the story. I'm affirming our need for it. I'm saying it must happen. It's part of any life to have a story of your life. So while I'm saying this, I still would like people to remember when constructing your story, you may have to compensate for some important limitations. We have limitations as storytellers. So let me just touch on some of them briefly. One limitation of our storytelling is that our awareness, it's kind of like having a flashlight in a really huge dark space. You can shine the flashlight lots of places. You can see lots of things. You can shine your awareness onto that thing, and you have to for you to be conscious of it, for it to become part of your story. So it's very easy as a human to get totally absorbed in a relatively limited range of objects perceived. Our story tends to focus on things like, did my project work out the way I wanted it to? Well, I mean, of course that's important, very much a part of your story. Meanwhile, all kinds of things are happening all over the place. It's just that you aren't shining your flashlight there, so you don't become aware of them, and they never become part of your story, even though they are. Another limitation, this one comes more from our cultural moment. In general, many social forces tend to be ignored by many people in our culture as they form their individual stories. Our culture directly emphasizes individuality. So, for example, one social force is it's very important to look good, whatever that might mean. Are you the proper weight? Do you have the proper or most attractive type of body or not? It's like a huge thing. But that social thing tends to be left out of people's stories. For both men and women, especially women, I think, struggle with this. People take their personal appearance, they either celebrate it if they're lucky enough to have what our culture considers an attractive body, or else their story might include feeling ashamed of their body. In either case, it's important to remember our culture is telling us stories as well. Our culture has values that determine what's beautiful and attractive or what's ugly and unattractive. So your personal individual story may be leaving out something very important, like I live in a culture that is way over considering the importance of how somebody looks. And especially in the U.S. culture, the individual is seen as a lone person who can possibly make a huge difference. People may think, for example, like a president is an important individual, and certainly every leader has some level of importance. But a leader is also just some person sitting in a room somewhere. The fact is that unless that leader has a lot of followers who will do what they say, they're not powerful. It's like, the emperor's new clothes. The leader's only powerful because everyone says, oh my God, he's so powerful. The leader and the followers are all mushed up together. One can't exist without the other. But we tend to see leaders as individuals and tell stories about how important individuals are. And so many of our personal stories leave out how interconnected we are. So one more limitation. This one I talk about elsewhere, but I'm going to mention it again. I really do think what size we are is ultimately indeterminate. We can't know for sure what size we actually are, because size only happens when you compare yourself to some other size. Compare yourself to the galaxy, very small. Compare yourself to a little quantum particle. You're huge. It's like, it totally depends on what you compare yourself to. So I think most people do not include in their story how indeterminate their size is. So I think most people have a quote unquote size that they feel like, and they tell their story from that particular size point of view. Someone may be aware of how tiny they are, and that's really what they're focused on, how tiny they are. And their story is about being insignificant, and they leave out how huge and important they are. Or sometimes, believe it or not, you may see the reverse. You may see someone who thinks of themselves as being huge and important. And you can observe many political leaders, many billionaires telling themselves a story along these lines. And they leave out how small and insignificant they are. It's hard to get the correct perspective about size because there is no correct perspective. There's no ultimate perspective. There's only the current perspective that you're using. Personally, I've been experimenting with multiple storylines. So as the main character, of course, of my story, I am simultaneously both important and unimportant. And see how that goes. Okay. Enough with the limitations. I encourage you, whether you do the origin story or not, I still encourage you, take some time to write out, to actually make some text, different aspects of your story. If you're not much for writing, just speak it out into a voice recorder or something that can transcribe what you're saying into text. Become aware of yourself as the human storyteller that you are. Become aware of yourself as the audience of your story. Try to factor in, if you can, if they make sense to you, factor in some of the limitations I discuss. Your story is important. Stories are, in a way, illusions, but they are real illusions that make a huge difference. Make sure your personal, illusory story is told well and heard by you. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Please visit the home of the 10 Crutches podcast at 10crutches.link. That's 10crutches.link. The book that inspired the podcast, a book I wrote called 10 Crutches for Walking in the Present, is available for free download on the website. While you are there, please take advantage of 2 ways to contact me. You can send me an email, or you can make a voice recording. If you have a great question, I may be able to use it for the podcast. Also on the website, you can visit the archive to hear any published episode and see show notes for any and every show. Thanks so much for listening. And once again, thanks so much for listening. And I won't say it once again. See you next time.